Hello to a new video. Today is Monday the 6th of June 2016. It is currently 11:29, just before noon. This video is once more touching on a number of topics for no particular reason, having to do with mind control, with inhumane technologies, remote neural monitoring, and so on and so forth. I mentioned 2 videos ago how they try to create lies about the potency of these technologies, and on that topic somehow I want to start this video off with a particular example of something that some people out there are made to believe that it works and does something. Namely, the interesting thing of getting 2 people to put their heads together or stick their heads together by getting person A in close proximity to person B, and that allegedly having some kind of effect or enabling certain things to travel from one brain to the other. Now I give you 2 examples for that. One, and you can Google on the image search here, just Google Vladimir Putin and Steven Seagal, and you wind up at magnificent pictures where Seagal is really leaning in on Putin, and you can do the same with Dennis Rodman and Kim Jong-un, where you get exactly the same things. Those are just 2 examples. There are several such examples. There are countless such examples, actually. I want to analyze this particular scenario of allegedly something being able to be smuggled into one person's mind merely by having somebody else go near that person's mind physically. Summarizing it, that's bullshit. It is impossible without any additional technology to get anything from one mind to another mind. There is no telepathy. Okay? There is technology that enables 2 minds or more minds in ring fashion to be connected to one another, yes, but that involves technology. If you take out the technology, you can have these 2 really hug up close and really lean in and touch one another's heads, and nothing will travel from the one brain to the other brain. It does not work that way. So, some people out there, and unfortunately I take it that is agencies or parts of armed forces agencies, services, are led to believe that something like that is possible, namely without an additional element of extra technology, that the good Mr. Rodman can bring something or extract something out of the head or into the head of Kim Jong-un, and with Seagal and Putin that being the same. Now, thinking this through, the only thing that can be done is if you have proxy tech placed at the site of the meeting. What you would avoid thus, so basically what would happen is you have proxy tech that, say, typically is on Putin's frequency, but if you have Seagal walk into such a proxy tech field with Putin, you can have the proxy tech change the frequency to Seagal's frequency to pick up and extract whatever it is that they actually were trying to smuggle into Putin's head via Seagal, to extract it out of Seagal's head, and then change the frequency to Putin again and put it into Putin's head, right? Or vice versa, right? Either the shoving or the extraction. That requires proxy tech. Now, even for that, why would they bother doing it like that if they could not guarantee network access to the proxy tech? However, the changing of frequency required for such a thing is proxy tech accessing. Now, admittedly, just commands travel rather than any actual content travels from wherever else in the network to the proxy tech. But still, you require a connection, a hardware IT connection to the proxy tech device in order to change around the frequencies of whatever proxy tech placed. Which means that you'd still be able to trace that networking, okay? Which really means that some people out there are being fooled into believing that that does something which for which the physical presence is not actually required. Now, the reason why I bring this up at all is because it is a magnificent example how services, secret agencies, and so on are fooled into a completely wrong understanding of how these technologies actually work. Okay? You don't need the presence of Seagal near Putin or Rodman near Kim Jong-un to at all have anything trouble like that, because you could extract it directly via the proxy tag. And if you really feared that someone were paying close attention to what travels along the proxy tag to the main infrastructure path, then you are pointlessly worrying yourself, because they would be able to trace the commands anyhow, right? So it is a complete self-ridiculing, really, of some agencies and services out there who orchestrate things like that by making themselves believe, by staying in this belief that two people putting their heads together actually is anything treble. Nothing trebles. Nothing. Which brings us back to the topic of telepathy itself. There is no telepathy without any kind of technology making it possible, which means true telepathy does not exist, never did exist, and never will exist. There ain't no such thing as telepathy. There are people out there, unfortunately, some interest groups. I really sincerely hope that they're not in services, but are amongst the crazy interest groups and religious interest groups and whatnot, who might buy into bullshit like that of there being telepathy. Maybe because they're simply regularly communicating with one another and they perceive that as telepathy, even though it's technology making it possible, but they don't buy into that technology or believe that that technology to them was sold as old relics of something, or something with magic powers, or of alien origin, or whatever, when it is just very earthly technology making all of this possible, okay? But a particular lie that they try to create is the proximity thing, two people putting their heads together and that allegedly doing something. It doesn't. They being the services and agencies that think this does something, are being ridiculed. It's not even making out as paranoid, because there they are hanging out with Rodman and Seagal and they're not being paranoid, right? So it's not to wage psychological warfare against the Russians and the North Koreans. It is bullshit. It is establishing and maintaining lies about the actual functionality of these technologies, right? That is one nice example. And what's to be remembered is that telepathy does not exist, namely natural telepathy without any kind of technology extracting something and shoving something in the other end, real hardware technology making it possible. As such, telepathy does not exist. That is one little example that I wanted to give people. And kind of in vain with what I also explained about how they try to paint a completely wrong picture about the potency of these technologies, and how they try to preemptively discourage and demoralize people who try to maybe look into these technologies and try to resist these technologies and fight these technologies. I want to bring your attention to a very programmatic book. This was completely and utterly planted and created for the interests of some interest group out there. A man called Julian Jaynes. I happen to have the German version here. Der Ursprung des Bewusstseins durch den Zusammenbruch der bikameralen Psyche. The English original title is called The Origin of Consciousness in the Breakdown of the Bicameral Mind. Written or originally published in 1976, though dating back to talks that the scientists gave in 1969. This book is utter crap. It breaks down into 3 books itself. One worse than the other. I mean, this is horrendously idiotic pseudoscience that was created for no other reason than to establish crazy ideas in already crazy people's minds. Nothing about this is the case. The third book is actually almost a blueprint for how to psychologically discredit people. It is outright a manual of how to discredit people in the field of psychology. The second book is so laughable that I must admit I only skipped through it. It has to do with alleged proof for his crazy theory in history. The man does not know a whole lot about history, and he does not, which is remarkable really, he does not understand the most basic human psychology involved, and how, if it at all were like he suggests, none of history would have ever happened, because society would have crumbled and not even happened. But I don't want to actually go as far as to criticize it, because this shit is not worth being criticized. I just want to point your attention to the first part, wherein he tries to explain that allegedly in olden days, until about the ascent of religions, people allegedly heard two voices in their heads, namely left hemisphere and right hemisphere of the brain. He even gets the science in this wrong. He talks what Wernicke Broca does, and he gets that wrong. He gets wrong that Wernicke actually works stereo, and that one filters out the noise and so on. He doesn't even mention that. He doesn't even understand what the fuck he's talking about. It's remarkable how ignorant this man was, but especially all of the voice of God, origin of religion shit in there, really inspired utterly criminally insane interest groups out there to embark on a quest of making fake gods in people's heads, and using these technologies to force religiosity onto people, and how to discredit them, and so on and so forth. I have explained countless times by now how what simply happens is your consciousness has artificially several, you can have your one consciousness spliced up into 2 or even 3 parts, running autonomously from one another if you connect it right, and you can additionally have up to 4 additional instances of your consciousness, which brings us to a very interesting topic, namely, so if there's all this mind control out there, who would be the mind controllers? I mean, wouldn't you have a mathematical problem down the line of who watches the watchers and so on? No. See, there is no thought police out there, because the simple thing is that you have everybody out there has a phase in their heads, most everybody out there has a phase in their heads turned on to be their own thought policemen. You don't have thought police out there investigating people's heads. You have their own phase work as a thought policeman, reporting back to the mothership, no aliens involved, if that person ever thinks something defined as illegal or wrong or whatnot by the view and definition and ideas of the people who instill that onto people's brains. So until you realize that that's going on, we all run around with our very own secret thought policeman in our heads. And you better understand that and just cease having that policeman happen, because that is counterproductive. And I want you to understand that everything over these past decades and decades and decades, everything in the field of science is complete farce, because every scientist working on whatever field of science has his results before he ever gets to communicate them extracted through his head, so they are in the case they're interesting enough, and forwarded to particular interest groups. All science is stolen out of people's heads, out of the real scientists' heads. The same goes true for anything happening in the business world. The same holds true for anything happening in the field of creative arts. And once more, I want to remind people that especially with the creative people, a lot of their creativity is abused to create scenarios that can be shoved down certain interest groups' scenario apps, right, to give them fodder. That comes out of the minds of writers and creative people whose faces are being slave labor style utilized to work as drones creating content for these people, and so on and so forth. I want you to understand that for decades and decades and decades now, the entire world is a complete farce. Crime is a complete and utter farce. Crime is institutionalized, is willingly for the destruction of society allowed to continue at the level it is happening, is deliberately ignored by some people. There are some people who argue that these technologies are there to isolate the criminals. No. What happens in penitentiary facilities is that criminals actually bred, criminals brief one another, and so on and so forth. Everything that happens in the field of politics is preemptively extracted. If people go to a meeting, every participator's stance and goal for the meeting is known in advance. If the funny Bilderberg freakazoids have their meeting, all of their brains are extracted in advance, and they're being given particular scripted content so that they all think they're very important fuckers and do something good for the world when they're completely had. And a lot of them, I mean, we're talking some people who believe in angels and believe in telepathy. I want to point out again that they are severely trying to create, genetically engineer and multi-father and so on and so forth, a new variant of human. And here we branch off to something, namely, they're already landscating, is that a word in English, landscating? They're already placing scientific, horrendously pseudoscientific as they are, but scientific, populistic, demagogic, and propagandistic science articles in some fields. For instance, I'll point you out to one. There is a website called PLOS ONE, that is not plus, P-L-U-S, but P-L-O-S, PLOS ONE. There's an article, Why Do You Believe in God? Relationships between religious belief, analytic thinking, mentalizing, and moral concern. That is the title of that scientific article. It is to be found on PLOS ONE, that's P-L-O-S. It is written by it's written by, the names given here are Anthony Ian Jack, Jared Parker Friedman, Richard Eleftherios Boyatsis, and Scott Nolan Taylor. What it all is about really is the fact that people have some people have a genetic defect in the brain, bereaving them of the ability to analytically think. And they paint this as if, oh, that isn't so bad, because allegedly they are more social then, right? And they tie this to religion. This is propaganda advertisement for their wanting to create humans where genetically removed is the ability for analytic thinking, and where they can get them more religious than they'd ever be, right? And this is, you just read this and understand the implication and what really is suggested in this. They already have this as a topic in advance so that, people don't see anything wrong and, well, okay, so I can't think analytically at all, but that's okay because I'm social, right? They are bagatellizing, if that is a word in English, the very defect that these people have in their heads. I mentioned in the past videos, I call it the Jedediah defect. If there's something wrongly connected in their brain, and that is by bio-aware nature. That is not a wrong, illegal connection that is worked in their brain via all of these technologies. That is actually in their bio-aware, right? In their gene code, they have a defect. Very important topic. Just yet another topic, really. So there's another topic. There's so much to talk about. The events in ex-Austria and really in Poland and Germany and whatnot, all over Europe at the moment, are so horrendous and destructive that once more I do want to point out that there are people who are working on the destruction of all mankind. There are people who are working on the destruction, not destabilizing, outright destruction of any and all and each and all society as such. However, I take that as a European, I take that as an attack against Europe. It is an attack against all mankind, and it is specifically an attack against Freiland in my particular case, but it is in the middle an attack against Europe. And as I am not just the prime protector of mankind, but also the reshaper of Europe, I just can't help pointing out again once more to all those interest groups and filth, mind controlling, mind manipulating, mass manipulating, mankind destroying, mankind enslaving filth in all of Europe, that I will be the one bringing you down. I might not be the one bringing down your ilk over in America, in South America, in Asia, in Africa, if there are any, probably are some in the northern parts. That might not be me, but in Europe, you attack Europe. And I also want to point out that I do not consider these attacks of... See, Europe is something. Europe has history. Europe is history, and I don't mean that in and now it's over. I mean, Europe is living history. Europe is an entity. Nothing, Asia is not an entity, Africa is not an entity, South America is not an entity, North America is not an entity, the US is just a country, Canada is just a country. Europe is, as a continent, an entity. Okay? Europe exists, and you people are doing away with Europe. You're doing away with all mankind. You might not even be specifically targeting Europe as such, but you accept that all of Europe is being done away with. And I will not have that. And I want to once more remind all the mindfuckers in Europe, on whatever remote little fucked up island or the continent, proper mainland, I don't care, that you will be brought down. And even to those Fex Mundi interest groups not in Europe, you're doing, happens to have the side effect of doing in Europe, and even you will be chased best as possible. Okay? I want you to understand that. The fact that there's practically no country in Europe right now where the society is not being attacked to such an extent as if you were pouring acid over all of the society, have it decay and just destroy all of society, all of Europe, that will not be allowed. And that will find an end. And not the end of Europe, if I can help it. You're attacking all Europe. And again, I understand that it's kind of funny, because you might not actually even have Europe as an entity as one of your targets. You might have the individual countries as targets. You might have just all of mankind and the world society as a target. But I consider Europe as a continent, as an entity targeted. So I might take offense over some of your texts for a reason that you don't even figure. Well, what you don't figure is none of my concern. I don't care if you figure it or not. You are attacking Europe, you are besmirching Europe, you are anally raping Europe, you are mind-fucking Europe, you are trying to do Europe in, and as the prime protector of mankind and as the reshaper of Europe, I will not have that. Period. So I wanted to remind the people in Europe of that. What else can we talk about? I just also want to remind the people of what is not possible. So generally, no telepathy involved, no freak mutation, no genetically engineered to be telepath people. Without any external actual technology, telepathy doesn't happen, period. Implants, there's a wonderful thing. One of the many lies that they create is shit about implants of whatever type. I have no implants, nobody else out there has any implants. If you implant something into your brain, fine. I don't know why you're doing it. You're deluding yourself, much like with Rodman and Seagal, that doing something. I could imagine that some agencies probably have their agents fitted out with whatever crazy implant and telling them that that does that and that when it does not at all do that, when that is not even required. This whole implant shit is shit. So no implants, no direct via satellite, no aliens, no angels, no gods, no souls of the deceased, no devil or demon or anything. That's really just God, as far as I'm concerned. As an atheist, there is no distinction between God or the devil. It's just the same, you know, superior crap entity concept. Ain't gonna happen. Ain't happening. No ancient technology of a long-sunk civilization. Nothing retrieved from Mars or elsewhere, right? No Martians involved. I also, having mentioned how all of Europe is currently, every single country in Europe is currently undergoing incredible destruction, the situation in Germany in particular, I want to remind the world of the fact that Nazis were created by the 16th Duke of Norfolk and his allies. Or at least were brought to power. They probably manifested by themselves, but they were allowed to power and brought to power and made to prosper by the 16th Duke of Norfolk. All of the German population was mind-fucked by them and by the Nazis, inadvertently using these technologies. So all of Nazi Germany was artificially created. All of Germany already got raped once. And we all know the horrendous outcome of it, historically. And the very idea that some IGs out there find it so funny to once more work such a lot of right-wing, radical, neo-Nazistic shit in Germany is not just insane, but it's tasteless. It's just beyond words, really. You know. So even though I don't have any particular ties to Germany, the shit going on in Germany, and of course in ex-Austria, there's a lot of right-wing shit being pulled at the moment. People being reduced to right-wing haters, zero intellect right-wing haters, artificially with the other technology. And for these parts, I do make the Abwehr responsible for that, even though they might have nothing much really actively to do with that. Well, they do in their willing execution as jobs, but you know, it is other people who pull the threads on that one. But even for that, I do again make the Abwehr responsible for that. So Abwehr, your collective hanging at Praterstern here, you will all be dangling down from the pergola. Look forward to that, Abwehr. When I rewatched the video last time around where I explained how I was given a sensation of being shot back in 2013, someone shooting me through the chest and someone shooting himself in the mouth, and a few minutes later some tissue coming down the mouth sensation was shoved as an afterthought. Very, very good scripting there. There is a lot of, I figured I never mentioned in video any of the other effects. The favorite, classic all-time favorite was hanging you upside down, right? When a human body is upside down, all of the bowels move up and all of the musculature reacts differently, namely trying to pull itself down again, so to speak. And all of that as a set of instructions being communicated to someone who's standing upright. So what does that mean? That's a classic, and I say this in order to once more identify myself as not someone who's talking shit to some agencies out there, but who actually knows what's going on. That is a classic. Giving someone who stands upright all body effects as if they were hanging upside down, including the blood pressure, all the blood being forced up into your body, right? And so on and so forth. That's a classic effect. On the visual, I had this happen twice. Once on a little walk. This was way back in 2013 in Hot Face. On a little walk, I was walking past. There were some politicians on the billboards then. They must have had some election back then in early 2013. I don't know what election that was for, but they had a politician's face, and they placed a distraction effect a sort of a prismatic swirly effect on the politician's face, so that it looked as if the 2D flat billboards posted and hang there of the politician were actually a 3D face, and that they would turn. That is an effect that was worked on me. Looking out here onto the opposite roof, I had a central piece in my field of vision, moving left-right. Everything else remained in place, but the very center moved left-right, which gave it the impression as if the roof moved about left-right. So that's another little visual effect that was worked on me. I could mention for hours all manners of effects that were forced upon me back in the hot phase when I got the elaborate attacks by the apps and so on and so forth. I want to mention one thing, the proxy tech. As I mentioned in my documents and what I call the ports list, the problem of the proxy tech is that it overrides at the very least the external ports of the ports list proper in the BioWare, and the proxy tech can, either it does that automatically by its nature, or it can be worked to do that, project its infrastructure, its internal ports infrastructure onto you and force your nervous system and your ports list to behave as if it had the very limited, by comparison, ports infrastructure of the proxy tech. Thereby, it basically knots up the external ports. I called that, the first time that was worked on me, I called it Marlin's knot with a K, K-N-O-T, just because I had the impression that all of the ports were knotted up, so that the elaborate communication on the real bio ports were no longer possible. I do want to point out to all those people who use the proxy tech that they might, seriously, they might not even understand that the very nature of the proxy tech, my right hand is not in view, the very nature of the proxy tech is actually not limiting, is actually forcibly overriding, namely unintentionally maybe, to you, the ports list working proper, okay? I do want to point this out. And information you try to shove into via the proxy tech might not wind up at those ports you actually try to find, just because there's fewer ports in the proxy tech than there are in the biosystem. Make sense of this yourself, or come talk to me, huh? So, yeah, I've been talking for a while. I want to mention this again. There never was no bicameral site that broke up or something like that. It is artificially created, spliced off instances of your own consciousness that can be turned on, so to speak, and nothing more than that. And I want you, crap as this shit is, I want you to read it, and just in order to understand what fodder for a whole lot of ultra crazy idiot people out there this is, down the lines of what this means if you are a delusional religious person, and what this opens in vistas and possibilities of using these mind-controlling technologies onto the people, if they think that, if they take this shit for true. And even those who don't take it for true, this is a blueprint for how to create a horrendously wrong understanding of the entire working here in your brain, and how to discredit everybody with book 3 in here. Okay? So, there. And I'll also mention this because I'm pretty sure that certain agencies have looked into everything I did online, and when I bought me this book, I am sure that some people sold it as if I bought into this, right? So I also want to mention this book. I know I might be 2.5 years too late for that. Just because I bought this book does not mean I believe in this shit. This is shit. This is shit off the scale, okay? This is not even interesting what if shit. Like Erich von Däniken, he's full of shit, but at least it's kind of funny shit, you know. And if you can play along if you want, but this is not even funny shit. This is just shit. It is completely unscientific. It gets science wrong. It abuses science, but moreover, it was planted. This was shoved Mr. James's head. I don't say that Julian James was one of the mindfuckers. This was shoved Mr. James's head. This was ordered, so to speak, this book here, okay? And this was 69 to 76 that this came into existence. The German copy that I have here was published first in 1988, which may or may not also have an importance as of these here European parts and certain interest groups, and you know, I mean, there must have been a reason why 12 years later they finally do bother to translate this into German, right? But you think that through yourselves. I want to remind you that there is absolutely no reason to be paranoid about being close to someone physically, right? The Rodman-Seagal thing. Nothing can be shoved from one brain to the other. Doesn't work without the aid of technology. And if you have technology near, namely proxy tech, you still need somebody commanding the proxy tech in order to extract this on that frequency and shove it into the other on the other frequency. So you have to have a connection, an IT networking connection to the proxy tech anyhow. And there you go, right? So I mention this just because, again, it goes to show how proxy tech and even area effects. See, area effects are the middle thing between doing it via the telecommunication infrastructure, which some people call a satellite, and doing a proxy tech. Area effects are an attempt to do a large proxy tech. So some of this extracting and shoving can be worked if they are in the same area, wider area, rather than just a few, say a dozen yards or something, or 2 dozen yards maybe. It can be a little wider, but it involves technology. Necessarily you must have technology. And there is no telepathy and there is no thoughts traveling from one brain to the other just because people stick their heads together. So I also say this to the targeted individuals. Individuals around you cannot give you something just because they are physically close to you. Okay? So simmer down there. And that's it for this video.